Hello viewers and welcome to yet another commentated Octagon match for Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm pleased to present you with an exceptionally special match. This happens to be the 5th week of the 4th season of Sam Mann's Warhammer 40k Conquest Octagon Online Competitive League. Both of our players today, Brain Damage 99 and Ready Spades, are at this point in the tournament the only players that happen to have gone undefeated. So Brain Damaged has adopted the role of Packmaster Kith, and dissimilarly, Ready Spades is playing Eldorath Starbane, the Eldar Warlord. So we're definitely likely to see a very close, a very harrowing match. And for our very first play of the game, it looks like Brain Damaged has chosen to put out a copy of the unique Dark Eldar unit Solarite Avedis to planet number 1, which is going to be followed up by a Bealtan Guardians, touching down on planet number 4 for our Eldar player. We end up seeing a Rogue Trader put out by Chris, Brain Damaged, and it's going to be played opposite an Incubus Warrior. As our deploy actions move from player to player, we end up seeing a copy of Void Pirate put out to planet number 3, so both of our players are establishing a pretty significant early game economy here. Just in assessing our planet layout, looks like planet number 1 is going to be Barless, which forces a random card discard. Planet 2 is going to be Farron, which allows a non-warlord unit to be routed. Planet 3 is going to be Planum, which allows you to move one unit from any planet to another. Planet number 4 is going to be Taurus, which rewards players for keeping their unit count low. And planet number 5 is going to be Iridial, which removes damage from target units. We end up seeing another deploy action. The Slith Mercenaries put out planet number 3 for Ready Spades, and seeing as how Chris has now passed, we end up seeing a Warlock Destructor and Rogue Trader put out to planet 2 and planet number 3 respectively. So it looks as though our Eldar player had a bit of a fantastic opportunity to really take advantage of his opponent passing here. So in regard to victory conditions, it looks like the earliest any player would be able to win is planet number 4. Both players at this point have indicated that they're going to be passing, and it seems as though we're going to see where command dials could go. I could definitely see Kith going to Planum to just relocate her Solarite Avedis, but we actually see Kith go to Taurus. So Kith is going to be generating a Chimera token more than likely, and that's going to potentially allow Kith the just stellar opportunity to not only kill off this Bealtan Guardians, not just trump command on this Bealtan Guardians, but also quite likely activate Taurus and win some cards or resources for herself. So at the present moment, it looks like our Eldar player did end up doing very well indeed in regard to command. Eldorath went to planet number 1, so he manages to exhaust Solarite Avedis. He's unlikely to win the combat at that planet, but he is going to be able to win command at a grand total of 4 different planets. And considering his Rogue Trader as well, we end up seeing our Eldar player take in a grand total of 4 cards and 4 resources relative to Chris's single card and single resource. But battle at the first planet is definitely looking like it could easily go to our Dark Eldar player. We indeed end up seeing Eldorath exhaust and retreat, and just in assessing our player's hands, we've got a copy of 2 Sufferings and 2 Klavex Warleader for our Dark Eldar player, so plenty of awesome shields. He definitely needs some resources in order to be able to play those powerful Warleaders here, and just in taking in a brief assessment of what our Eldar player has, he's just got a complete glut surplus of economic units out across the board. He was quite nicely able to prevent our Dark Eldar player from triggering either that Rogue Trader or Void Pirates. We end up seeing that random card discarded from our Eldar player's hand be a copy of Slith Mercenaries. And taking a peek at our Eldar player, he's got some more economy units, like that Bealtan Guardians, he's got another Warlock Destructor, and a Starbane's Council, which is going to be just critical in trying to best our Dark Eldar player here. We also see a copy of Doom, which is kind of an interesting tech choice. So we'll have to see if the likely to be aggressive Dark Eldar player ends up being punished by by that doom. In regard to resources, currently we've got Brain Damaged with 2 resources, 5 cards, Ready Spades with 4 resources, 5 cards. We're going to end up seeing a battle at Taurus as well. Both players indicate they have no actions. We end up seeing a Chimera token exhaust, and it quite handily ends up killing that Bealtan Guardians. Packmaster Kith retreats, and of course her associated Chimera token stays put at that planet. Just in regard to unit totals, it looks like Kith has 5, and as well, it seems as though our Eldar player has 5, so it seems as though generating that Chimera token is in hindsight a little bit of a mistake, just in wanting to keep unit counts, as low as possible, so definitely a bit of a shame for our Dark Eldar player, definitely struggling in a bit of an economic sense here, but we end up seeing our first headquarters phase occur, and once again, due to my presence in the game, I've managed to somehow interfere with Octagon's automation. At the beginning of the deploy phase, we see this forced reaction take place on the Warlock Destructor. Our Eldar player, which has a wealth of resources, does invest that single resource required to get the Warlock Destructor maintained and fully operational, and we end up seeing a copy of the Bealtan Guardians put out to our new planet number 5, which is going to be Karnath. So Karnath could heal, it could do the low unit count reward, it could move a unit, or it could rout a unit. For our Dark Eldar player, one of the cards he ended up drawing this turn happens to be the Archon's Palace, put out for 2, and that's going to be a just fantastic opportunity for our Dark Eldar player to potentially try to catch up in a bit of an economic sense. So any target planet he could deprive all resource or card bonuses, including Rogue Traders and Void Pirates, just in a single fell swoop. And the longer that this game goes, the more value he's ultimately going to get out of Archon's Palace. He also has a Chimera Master, which would be awesome for a command. He's got a Chaos Fanatics, both of those great economy cards. We end up seeing a Starbane's Council, one of several powerful combat units our Eldorath player happens to possess in hand. He's got another copy of the Council, he's got Wild Rider Squadron, Warlock Destructor, just a lot of nasty stuff, so I think it's all going to be up to our Eldar player at the moment to try to lock down this command and then block off Kith's just strongest points for victory. So Kith only happens to have that one strong point icon. Kith has got 4 resources left, so it's going to be kind of up to Kith. How do we want to try to win command? You could easily use your Chaos Fanatics to meet the value of something like this Incubus Warrior at 4, or the Bealtan Guardians at 5, but without doing a Chimera Master, you're not going to be able to actually trump your opponent. Definitely not to my surprise, we see the Chaos Fanatics go to planet number 3, and that's going to allow them to win command over this Starbane's Council. But our Eldar player ends up affixing a copy of Mobility to the Starbane's Council, and that's going to, after it loses command at that planet, presuming it does, if it needs to hunt down Kith, if it needs to go potentially Warlord hunting, it can just trigger mobile to move to planet 2 or planet number 4, so very nice wide threat range. Wild Rider Squadron is going to be another fantastic just threat range card. Kith only happens to have 2 resources left. We could see this Chimera Masters put out, but Kith is definitely going to want to try to save up resources for those Klavex War Leader. They're pretty powerful in regard to command. It's great that they can auto-kill any damaged units, but Kith has to be able to do a little bit of damage in the first place, and Kith doesn't really have a strong economy to just amass the required number of resources to really get those functioning. So at the present moment, it looks like we're waiting on our Dark Eldar player. What, if anything, are we going to see? Are we going to see the Chimera Masters, or are we going to see one of our players pass? Chris, our Dark Eldar player, indicates that he has indeed passed. So what exactly can we expect from Ready Spades? So, he uses his last remaining resources to put out a copy of Starbane's Council to the first planet. I can only imagine that he very much wants to take control of that planet. So, just in regard to victory conditions, once again, we could have Farron, Taurus, and Iridial 1, and that would allow Ready Spades to take this game. So, both of our players are picking where exactly they'd like to send their warlords. I could definitely see Eldorath going to planet number 3, Kith, I'm a little bit uncertain. I could see Kith going to planet number 2 just to ensure that perhaps Kith manages to win command at that planet and that Kith can drop off the Solarite to a strong point planet that she could definitely use. I could also see Kith trying to push Taurus just to get resources, but then that wouldn't be the most useful, combined with that Chaos Fanatics. But we see both players end up going to planet number 2, and that's just going to be an absolutely fantastic opportunity for Eldorath to deny a little bit of economy to Kith. So there's only going to be a grand total of 1 planet that Kith is going to win just any resources and cards from. So that is fantastic for Eldorath, because, my god, things are looking a little bit bleak right on the offset for Packmaster Kith, and the more choking, the more denial that our Eldar player can do, the better things are going to look for him. So Ready Spades gets 3 cards, 3 resources. The Archon's Palace denies him of 2 resources at Farron, and some of those cards looks like we see a Rogue Trader, a Wild Rider Squadron, and a Gift of Isha for our Eldar player. So the topmost Eldar unit in his discard pile is at present the Bealtan Guardians, but as soon as it's something more formidable or hard-hitting, like this copy of the Warlock Destructor at planet number 1, for instance, that's going to just be a tremendous amount of damage dealt out to Kith, potentially. Brain Damaged ended up drawing 1 card, 1 resource. He's now got 3 2-shield cards in his hand, which could be very useful. Raid could be very useful in affording him an opportunity to get another resource here. Looks like the battle ability triggers at the planet Farron, planet number 1, prior to that being captured by our Eldar player, and he picks Solarite of Vetus as his chosen target there. So the Solarite is once again routed. She'll have to return to play exhausted during the following turn, and just taken all together, there's so many nasty things that our Eldar player has out here. He ended up triggering Mobile to bring Starbane's Council to our second planet. The initiative token happens to be in Eldorath's hand, and we see his first action during combat at that planet having the Slith mercenaries take a swing to try to kill this Chimera token, but we end up seeing a copy of Suffering played out from Kith's hand in order to basically cancel out that effect. So the Chimera token takes no damage. It's now Kith's opportunity to attack. As soon as Kith attacks, she's going to be exposed to potentially being hit by this Starbane's Council here. So it's a little bit tricky. Eldorath only attacks for 1. The Rogue Trader only attacks for 1. We're either going to have to force a retreat from Kith, or she's going to leave herself open to just being savaged. But the Chimera token ends up taking a swing at the Starbane's Council. Note that Chris only has 3 resources, so he's not in range of having a Clavex War Leader played on him, and considering that Raid can only be played if your opponent has more resources, Raid is not going to be able to steal resources. So things are starting to look a little bit grim for our Dark Eldar player. Kith could certainly take a swing and finish off the Starbane's Council, but if that were to occur, we could see a Gift of Isha return it to play, and then Kith would take a bunch of damage, though that would in turn leave, well, I suppose if that were to happen, Raid would not occur because the opponent would have fewer resources, so we're in no danger of seeing a Clavex War Leader at any point here. But looks like Starbane's Council is perhaps in the process of attacking. We've had a little bit of exhaustion going on. We end up seeing a copy of Raid played. Alright, so I take just a moment. It looks as though my presence in the game is interfering with not just Octagon, but also just the plays of our players here. So it seems as though Chris accidentally mistook myself, which is reading 4 resources for his opponent, so unfortunately Raid cannot be played, and so very small mistake there, but it seems as though that's not going to be an opportunity for Chris to hit that 4 resource token threshold that would have been so incredibly useful to get one of these warlords out. But we end up seeing a Starbane's Council take a swing at Packmaster Kith. I suppose he just wants to make sure to get out that damage while he still can, presuming that Kith will be retreating at her earliest opportunity, and we see a copy of Suffering discarded by our Packmaster Kith playing brain-damaged player. So Kith is only ultimately going to take 1 point of damage. It's now Kith's opportunity to attack in return. Are we going to see a retreat? We end up seeing Kith push the offensive, and the Starbane's Council is likely to be destroyed, and then I imagine we're going to end up seeing that Gift of Isha return the Starbane's Council to play, only to have that potentially bloody Kith, were it not for this copy of Raid sitting here. But we end up seeing a copy of Gift of Isha used now. I'm not sure personally if it would have been wiser or not to wait until after Eldorath had gotten in a single swing. I suppose it wouldn't have really made too much of a difference, presuming Kith wouldn't have shielded against that attack. Clearly, these are both fantastic players here, so I can't imagine they'd make such a simple mistake. But Kith is going to be taking 3 points of damage, and are we going to see that copy of Raid discarded to block the additional 2? Okay, we do end up seeing that copy of Raid, so it's finally used. Kith has a grand total of 4 damage on her. She's got 2 hit points remaining. Unfortunately for our Eldorath player, there's nothing else that he can do to accrue an additional single point of damage onto Kith. Eldorath ends up taking a swing and killing off that Chimera token, so very wise play indeed. And now not only is Kith nearly bloodied, but the fact that she's going to be kicked off of a planet in almost any single attack is just potentially just devastating. But in regard to retreats at the end of the round, it looks as though we see a copy of the Slith mercenaries retreating from the planet, and it seems as though Kith and the Void Pirate for our Packmaster Kith player are also going to be retreating. So Planum is going to be able to activate, and that means that the Warlock Destructor is going to be moved from Ready Spades HQ to our soon-to-be planet number 1, Planum. So both of our warlords have returned to their HQs at the moment, and we're about to move into the HQ phase. There are no additional actions from both of our players, and now let's see how Octagon deals with this upcoming HQ phase here. Alright, so our headquarters phase finally comes and goes. Octagon does decide to participate. We see the initiative token change hands, so Packmaster Kith now possesses the initiative. It looks like our Eldar player is indeed going to be paying 1 resource in order to fund that Warlock Destructor, so I think that's been a couple of resources now invested in that unit. And so at present, we've seen 4 resources and 2 cards generated by each player. Packmaster Kith has 7 resources. She ended up drawing a copy of Siren Zithlex, as well as a Pact of the Homunculi. So that's going to potentially allow a random discard from the opponent, and then drawing 2 additional cards if Kith ever feels the need to really dig for some effects. But we end up seeing Siren Zithlex put out to our planet number 2, and that's going to be very critical for Kith, because it happens to be possessing a strong point icon, and more than that, it also happens to possess a material icon, so it helps Kith win and prevents Eldar from potentially winning here. Alright, so it looks as though we've corrected for a very small mistake. Once again, the Octagon functionality being screwed up because of my presence meant that our Eldar player apparently did not end up drawing 2 cards during the HQ phase, and he is ultimately going to choose to put out a rogue trader to our new planet number 5, which happens to be the triple planet type icon Yvarn. So very strong economic presence still established for our Eldar player, but the Dark Eldar is definitely starting to see a bit more of a presence as well. So we've got an Archon's Terror and Doom in the hands of our Eldar player, but, you know, still just a big daunting command presence for the Eldar player, plenty of powerful combat units, lots of smaller, weaker units for Kith, and then just in assessing resources, we've got 2 resources, 3 cards for Kith, and 3 resources, 6 cards for our Eldar player. Definitely many more, you know, high-value shield cards, I believe, are yet to come in our Eldar player's deck, where I believe we've already seen 3 2-shield value cards used for Kith. So Kith is close to being bloodied. Eldorath is going to be able to just continue harassing, you know, the Packmaster Kith player just fantastically, but we end up seeing another copy of Starbane's Council played out into the battlefield. It goes to planet number 1, so it definitely looks like our Ready Spades is just going to be really pressing those planets. Technology and Strongpoint aren't exactly going to feed into his current victory condition, but if he wins battle at the first planet, he can shift any of his units to wherever he'd like, potentially planet number 2, just to help make up for his inability to deploy ready units to planet number 2 because of Siren Zithlex. Looks like Kith ends up going to planet number 2, and then Eldorath is going to go to planet number 3, so it's going to be quite a bit of an economic, you know, disparity once again. Big income for our Eldar player, not so much for Packmaster Kith, but depending on exactly how unit totals work out, it could nevertheless be just a great opportunity for Kith to trigger Taurus here. But just in assessing Kith's unit count, looks like she's at a total of 9 relative to our Eldar player, who is also at 9, so kind of interesting there. I can't quite recall if Kith generated a Chimera token or not, but if, you know, situation comes down to this, it's that kind of thing which can just really be critical in making a big difference here. So the Archon's Palace triggers once again on planet number 1. It looks like, I believe that was denying resources, and our Eldar player ends up getting 2 cards and 1 resource in total. So it was a mini planets one, but that Archon's Palace is just enormously frustrating in providing that constant denial. We're going to end up seeing a battle at the first planet. Looks like our Dark Eldar player drew a copy of the Incubus Warrior, and for our Eldar, we see an Iandan Wraithguard, a Bloodied Reaver, and another, I suppose this Bealtan Guardians was already in hand. So not a lot of terrific combat events. Both players are going to have 3 resources, so neither of them is at that Clavex War Leader threshold. Planum is going to be captured, and interestingly, it seems as though this Warlock Destructor has been moved to Taurus, our soon-to-be planet number 2. So I guess that the Warlock Destructor, it being killed, means that there's no way that Kith is going to be able to trigger Taurus. I can only assume anyway, and then I can imagine that our Eldar player doesn't want to keep investing resources in this Warlock Destructor here, but the Warlock Destructor takes a swing. We end up seeing a Pact of the Homunculi discarded as shields in order to prevent Siren Zithlex from being killed in a single swing. So let's see, what exactly are we going to expect from our Dark Eldar player? There's no Gift of Isha or anything like that. Doom isn't doing really any good at the moment. Definitely after the battle concludes at Taurus, Doom could provide a fantastic opportunity for our Eldar player to just completely scour Kith's HQ, but the Warlock Destructor takes a little bit of damage, and the Warlock Destructor ends up being destroyed, so the Siren and the Chimera token are able to kill that off, and once again, just doing a real quick once-over in regard to unit count, looks like Kith has 9, and Eldar only has 8, so there was really no way that Taurus could have been triggered by Kith, but she's certainly denied that battle ability, and there's also going to be a battle now taking place at Iridial, so this is Eldorath conveniently blocking Kith from being able to trigger this healing effect, and this is going to be a nice opportunity for our Eldar player to use his hard-hitting Dark Eldar allied unit to deal out some pretty significant damage to the fledgling Dark Eldar economy. So we end up seeing the Chimera Masters destroyed, the Rogue Trader attacks for 0, doesn't matter what the target is, and now Eldorath is going to have an opportunity to quite likely kill off that Chimera token. There are no more shield cards in our opponent's hand, and now unit count doesn't matter too much, save for during the following round, and I can only imagine that Doom is potentially going to make quite a bit of a difference here. So let's see what exactly is going to occur. At the present moment, we still have our Dark Eldar player with 1 green strong point icon. Our Eldar player happens to have a red and green and blue icon. And let's see how things play out. So it looks as though the headquarters phase occurs, the initiative token passes across to Ready Spades, and both players end up drawing 2 cards, generating themselves 4 resources. And let's go ahead and take a look in regard to what exactly our players got. We see a 3rd copy of Suffering for Packmaster Kith, as well as another copy of Chimera Masters. And then for our Eldar player, we've got a couple Bloodied Reavers. We end up seeing a Void Pirate played to planet number 4, and in regard to economy, it's just a huge wealth of units that Kith has sitting here at the first planet. So 2 uniques, the Chaos Fanatics, a Chimera token, a Void Pirate. I can only imagine that we are going to see our Eldorath player maybe go to planet number 2 to deposit units there, or really at any other planet where victory condition could be useful. So we see a copy of Incubus Warrior put out to planet number 4 by our Packmaster Kith player. So that means that the economic prowess is going to be matched at that planet. We'll have to see our Eldar player put out another unit in order to best that Incubus Warrior, and now it's making me think that Kith might be quite likely to touch down at planet number 4, just to deny that Void Pirate and Rogue Trader and ensure that she gets a little bit of income from this Rogue Trader. But that's probably fine by accounts of Eldorath, just because really all he needs to do is do something like win Iridial and win Karnath. So I could definitely see Karnath being a convenient option for our Eldar player to go to. Chimera Masters are put out to planet number 3 by our Dark Eldar player, and we see a Wild Rider Squadron also at planet number 3 for our Eldar, and that's going to be nice because based on wherever Kith goes, the Wild Rider Squadron can move in and deal some damage opportunistically. Chris only has 3 resources at the moment, but as soon as he wins anything at all, he's likely to hit 4, and therefore he'll be at the Clavex Warleader threshold. But the question is, can Packmaster Kith avoid being bloodied long enough to deal out damage that's required for that Clavex Warleader to use its ability to potentially kill off something like our Wild Rider Squadron here? So both players are picking where exactly to send their warlords. I'm assuming Kith will go to planet number 4, and I can only imagine that Eldorath might go to perhaps planet number 2. We ended up seeing a Bloodied Reavers put to planet number 3 by Eldorath, and that's just going to be incredibly nasty, because if Kith goes to Karnath, that's going to be attacking for 4. Eldorath could go to planet number 2 and drop off a 2nd copy of Starbane's Council, and even if we see planet number 5, that Wild Rider Squadron is still going to be able to swoop in, so we could easily see Eldorath go to our very, 4th and final planet. So just so many interesting possibilities as both players try to guess and outguess one another. Eldorath does and plays it reasonably safe at planet number 2, and surprisingly we end up seeing Packmaster Kith go to planet number 2, and this is going to be a little bit of a problem because Packmaster Kith does not have the initiative token. She's going to be taking a swing of 3 straight to her face. Kith indicates she is not going to make a token just to try to keep her unit count as low as possible to trigger Taurus, but Kith, without the assistance of this Suffering here, would be bloodied. So very, very close call for Kith. Interestingly, if Eldorath had in the past decided to put another point of damage on Kith as opposed to a Chimera token, we could potentially see Kith bloodied this round. The Archon's Palace is going to trigger that very last planet. Let's see if we end up seeing resources triggered once again. So Kith has done a pretty spectacular job of just denying our Eldar player of resources, but he's still going to earn 4 during the HQ phase, and Doom is going to be a fantastic target to kill off. Looks like 10 resources worth of units. So battle is going to occur at the first planet here. We end up seeing Chris, our Dark Eldar Packmaster Kith player, draw 2 cards and 1 resource. He got a copy of the Archon's Terror and Agonizer of Bren. I'm sure he's very happy to see those 3 shields. And now, let's see how it goes. Looks like the players are 11 versus 11 for unit count. So much to the dismay of Packmaster Kith, looks as though he's not going to be able to trigger Taurus, and that must be incredibly frustrating in an economic sense. But it looks like we did see at least a couple cards come in for our Eldar player. Or, okay, it looks like there was a small miscount, so it looks as though... let's see here. Well, as our players are figuring out unit counts, we ended up seeing a second copy of Doom for Eldar and a copy of the Autarch as well. So it looks as though Kith does indeed have a lower unit count, hence Kith choosing not to generate a Chimera token. So let's see how things go. Resources or cards for Kith. I could only imagine at this point we're probably going to want to see perhaps resources just to get these Clavax war leaders out and into combat. But what are we going to see? Chris does indicate that he'd like the resources instead of cards, so he's going to be up to 7 resources, 6 cards in total, and Ready Spades is at 2 resources and 9 cards. So just in regard to mid-combat units and events, we could see Clavax War Leader used, we could see Archon's Terror used from Kith, or we could see Archon's Terror used by our Eldar players. So what are we going to see? Battle is going to happen at Iridial. I think it's unlikely that Kith will win this planet. As the very first action, we end up seeing the Incubus Warrior take a swing at Packmaster Kith, so that's 3 incoming damage. Do we end up seeing a Suffering or an Agonizer of Bren used as shields? We end up seeing the Agonizer of Bren, so all of that damage is going to be circumvented, and now Kith is going to have the opportunity to either attack and wound a unit for subsequent Clavax War Leader destruction, or she can simply use her action to retreat. So it looks as though Ready Spades indicates no actions on Eldorath's part, and what are we going to see from Kith exactly? She's taking some very, very big risks as soon as she attacks, because Starbane's Council that's ready would potentially be able to bloody her, but very wisely indeed, Packmaster Kith takes a swing at that Starbane's Council. We do not end up seeing a 2 shield value card, which means that the Starbane's Council is going to take a point of damage, and then Chris is going to be able to dump a copy of Clavax War Leader out onto the planet and immediately kill off that Starbane's Council. And even if Kith might... Well, it seems as though Kith is going to survive until the end of the combat round here, just the way that damage is dealt out. Like, let's say the Starbane's Council is destroyed, the Slith Mercenaries takes a swing, Packmaster Kith has that 2 shield icon card, then we could see an attack for 3, just destroying some Eldar units. Eldorath isn't going to be able to do enough by his own, and then Kith can retreat at the end of combat. We do see the Clavax War Leader come out. That Starbane's Council is outright obliterated, but I forgot about this guy. The Wild Rider Squadron is going to take this opportunity to shift in. And now what exactly are we going to see? The Wild Rider Squadron is going to actually get targeted by an Archon's Terror. So that Wild Rider Squadron is going to be routed, immediately banished to Eldorath's HQ. And now what's going to be really frustrating is that if Eldorath ends up playing out a copy of Doom, it's going to effectively destroy his Wild Rider Squadron. So that's definitely a little bit of a shame to see. But you know, never know how things are going to go until you try. So as Slith Mercenaries ultimately takes a swing at Packmaster Kith, are we going to see that copy of Suffering discarded in order to guarantee that Kith will be able to get out an additional Chimera token? What are we going to see? We do end up seeing that copy of Suffering played, or discarded, and that's going to be one single resource left for Chris and 2 cards relative to the 2 resources, 9 cards for our Eldar player. This Clavax War Leader is still present at the planet. It's a fairly formidable foe. We do end up seeing a copy of Archon's Terror, so very nicely done. Fantastic setup for a Doom. And now Eldorath is going to have an opportunity to attack. I would imagine he'd take a swing, put a final point of damage on Kith, make it absolutely trivial for Kith to be banished at this point. Unless there's maybe 2 more copies of Raid in our Kith player's deck, we're out of 3 and 2 value shield cards, I can only assume. So Kith is going to be at a single hit point, and that means that if she's only got, 1 shield icon cards, any 2 value swing from the Eldar player is going to mean a bloodied Kith. We see Kith retreat, and that means Iridial is going to activate for Eldar, but of course he doesn't have any eligible targets apart from Packmaster Kith, and I don't quite think Ready Spades is that good of a sport, so just a tremendous number of units in Kith's HQ. I can only imagine that Chris is hoping and praying that we don't actually have 1 copy of Doom, let alone 2, in our Eldar player's hand, so things are about to get all the way bad for Kith, but we're about to go into our headquarters phase. We've seen all combats, and let's see if Octagon is going to participate. We end up seeing a successful headquarters phase, so the initiative token goes to Packmaster Kith. Both of our players are going to end up drawing 2 cards, generating 4 resources. We end up seeing the Chimera Den, which is going to be a fantastic play for Kith under typical circumstances when she has quite a few Chimera token in play. But what are we going to see here? Looks like our Eldar player won a Nullify and an Incubus Warrior. Presently 4 resources for Eldorath, 5 resources for Chris. But what are we going to see? There's no Archon's Terror to be nullified. There's plenty of fantastic Eldar combat units, but alas, there's just not enough resources in our Eldar player's hand to do it. And at our first opportunity, we end up seeing a copy of Doom played out. We see an LOL from Chris, so he must not have been expecting that. That is going to be just absolutely wretched. It's 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 15 resources worth of units that single copy of Doom is going to obliterate. So just absolutely devastating effect there. And now, how exactly... Oh, I'm sorry. So Doom, I apparently misspoke. It is non-unique units that it affects. So I was thinking it was different than Exterminatus. Once again, my inexpertise and naivete is showing. So Solarite Vetus and Siren Zithlex are very much going to be alive. And don't I seem an idiot? So the Chimera Den ends up being played into Packmaster Kith's HQ, and now our Eldar player is going to have an opportunity to deploy, but with 0 resources left, I can't imagine he's going to be really playing much of anything. None of the cards in his hand end up being eligible to be put into play. So, Ready Spades indicates that he is done, and now it's all going to come down to Packmaster Kith. We've just got this promotion here, and Kith is definitely going to want to win 2 resources to make him eligible to put this second copy of Clavax War Leader into play. So it's absolutely crucial that our Packmaster Kith end up getting a couple of resources. Kith presently has 2 strong point icons, so if Kith wins at Iridial, that means that our Dark Eldar player is going to take the game. Quite conveniently, we can use this Chimera Den to reel in up to 3 different Chimera tokens, but it looks like in regard to committances, Packmaster Kith is deciding to play out the long game. She's not in any immediate danger of losing. So Kith and Eldorath both go to planet number 2, and that means we're going to see quite a bit of economy for Eldar. But just a tremendous number of units are going to be sitting here at planet number 2. The battle ability of Iridial is going to be triggered for our Eldar player, and then Karnath is going to be able to potentially trigger Yvonne. So we're not really going to see much along the lines of battle abilities at this point in the game, but we see that Archon's Palace trigger, and what exactly are we going to see? Is it going to continue denying resources like I can only imagine? So Archon's Palace targets planet number 2, and once again, Chris says no resources. So planet number 1 is going to mean 1 card for Eldar. Planet number 2 is also going to mean 1 card for our Eldar player. If I'm counting up my units, command icons correctly, yes. And planet number 3 is going to be tied, so definitely not much of an income, just 1 card, 1 resource. For our Eldar player, he ended up getting a copy of the Iyanden Wraithguard, and if you look at his hand, just so many incredibly powerful units, but absolutely no resources to put them into play with. And even though Kith doesn't have anything tremendously hard-hitting of her own, just a tremendous wealth of different individual units are sitting out here on the tabletop. So looks as though this first planet, if we don't see any action from Chris, is going to be won by our Eldar player. That's going to put him at 2 planet icons of each type. We end up seeing a Wild Rider squadron relocate itself to Yavvarn. I suppose I ended up missing that being played entirely, and that's going to be a pretty fantastic opportunity for that Wild Rider squadron to at least survive. But combat is breaking out at the first planet. Looks like the first planet is indeed going to be captured by Ready Spades, and now there's going to be a tremendous amount of combat taking place at our soon-to-be planet number 1. So Kith will either, let's see, I suppose if Kith wins this planet and Yavvarn, so Kith is going to have to win 2 planets in a row in order to take the game, but it's going to come down to this battle here at Karrnath. So it looks like no actions from our initiative token possessing Packmaster Kith. She has 2 resources, which is not enough for a Clavex war leader, but Kith takes a swing at the Bloodied Reavers, and now we end up seeing Nullify discarded as shields. So the Bloodied Reavers is going to be able to attack in return. It could deal out a couple points of damage to Solarite Avedis, or it could Bloody Kith. We end up seeing the Bloodied Reavers take a swing at Kith, and that is very much overkill, so it's a damn shame that our player wasn't aware that, you know, the only card in hand happens to be this Clavex War Leader, but we finally end up seeing Kith bloodied. It was just definitely overkill. Looks like Ready Spades calls out finally over chat, and now it's going to be our Dark Eldar player's opportunity to make his opponents suffer. So 1 resource for Ready Spades. He doesn't have a Gift of Isha. Even if he did, it wouldn't be enough to play it. But the Bealtan Guardians are going to ultimately take enough damage that they are killed, and now Eldorath is going to take a swing. Is he going to kill off a Chimera token? He will, in return, end up taking 3 points of damage, but I think that's probably definitely worth it. So he ends up killing a Chimera token, and now, whether or not we see shields, this is going to be a good opportunity for our Dark Eldar player to inflict at least a little bit of damage onto Eldorath here. But a Chimera token exhausts, and I suppose the obvious target for that would have, of course, been the Bloodied Reavers. We end up seeing the Bloodied Reavers successfully destroyed, and now just a Chimera token left with which to attack Eldorath. So before Eldorath retreats, let's see him take a couple points of damage. So there's no shielding to be done. Eldar, at the end of the combat round, I can only imagine is going to be retreating. Indeed, he does. And is our Dark Eldar player going to trigger Yavvarn? Something tells me that Karrnath is not actually going to trigger Karrnath's battle ability here. So we're about to go into yet another HQ phase. This is very much a long, grueling game, and let's see if Eldorath can try to pull himself out of this one. What's got to be monumentally frustrating is that Siren Zithlex has managed to deprive our Eldar player of resources for so long that even if he could manage to get some of these units into play, it's going to be very important that he try to potentially well, I suppose he doesn't really need to block off Kith at Karrnath, and any army units he did play at that planet would be put into play exhausted. So 2 cards, 4 resources for both players. We get a copy of Gift of Isha for our Eldar player, which has got to be just absolutely fantastic for him to see that. And now I can only imagine that our Eldar player is going to just absolutely fill planet number 2 with units, because if our Eldar player ends up winning battle at Yavvarn, he's going to be able to pull this game out and ultimately win. This Chimera Den is going to be incredibly nasty in that it can allow all of these Chimera tokens to shift from planet number 1 to planet number 2 in order to get in some attacks. and that's going to be pretty nasty. It's going to help our Dark Eldar player increase the likelihood of their winning, but what exactly are we going to see? The initiative token happens to be in Eldorath's hand. We haven't seen any deploy actions yet, but what are we going to see? We end up seeing a copy of Autarch Salakia put out to our second planet, and this is going to be absolutely crucial because one of those abilities that the Autarch can gain happens to be the Area Effect 1 keyword, which you definitely do not, under normal circumstances, see affixed to any kind of Eldar unit. So this was expensive at 4, but being able to kill any number of Chimera token potentially in a single swing is incredibly useful. Archon's Terror is not going to be able to route unique units like the Autarch, so that is just going to be a tremendous pain in our Dark Eldar player's ass. And having 6 resources, our Dark Eldar player could easily do a Klavex Warleader and Archon's Terror, so definitely very, very close, but I'm certainly not comfortable declaring one of these players the victor yet. So will Kith, I assume, go to planet number 1? We're not going to see Kith generating any additional resource tokens. Our Eldar player, to no one's surprise, ends up going to planet number 2, and of course Kith plays it safe, going to planet number 1. So this is going to be yet another fantastic opportunity for the Archon's Palace, played, I think, on the first, maybe second turn, to deprive Eldar once again of so many valuable resources. Eldorath's first action is to exhaust that Incubus Warrior. His reaction is triggered, and it looks as though it's, resources once again, so just 1 card in total for our Eldar player. Warlock Destructor is definitely a nice draw. It's a very efficient draw in regard to, units that you want to stick around to kill off as many Dark Eldar as possible, and it's really units like this and the other copy of Warlock Destructor that could ultimately make all the difference. 4 hit points is a pretty sticky unit, and our Dark Eldar player, as soon as Autarch Salakia does Area Effect 1, the only shield cards we're seeing at the moment happen to be these this Archon's Terror, so that's going to be great at killing off Chimera tokens. But the first planet is going to be captured by Chris. That's going to bring Chris to 2 red, 2 green, and 1 blue icon, and that means everything is going to come down to this very final battle at the 7th planet. So an epic match between 2 incredible players. We see just a wealth of units entered Kith's HQ once again. We do happen to see a second copy of Doom, and I'm curious as to whether or not that's going to be played out again. It could definitely kill off a lot of stuff. 2 Chimera Masters, 2 Chimera tokens. We see the Wild Rider Squadron take a swing at the Incubus Warrior, so it looks like our Eldar player is going for a guaranteed kill there. Definitely wanting to leave that Autarch Salakia ready. And now what exactly are we going to see? Whether it's a resource for Autarch Salakia to gain area effect and kill off all of those Chimera tokens, or whether it's Doom that kills off all those Chimera tokens and whatnot. It's all a little bit of a tricky situation. Chris is thinking, he's got to be thinking, do I want to use my Chimera Den? Do I want to bring 1 Chimera in to get in an attack? Do I want to bring in none? I suppose there's not really any good reason to not send 1 in, even though it's going to be destroyed. It would be a nice opportunity to get a little bit of damage onto any of these units you'd like, make a nice setup for the Klavex Warleader. So let's, I suppose, think about this. Just would be a great chance to... We do end up seeing the Chimera Den exhaust. So is a Chimera token going to come down, maybe hit the Autarch, maybe set it up for the Klavex Warleader to kill it? Let's see what exactly happens. We could see that happen, and then maybe a Starbane's Council would get potentially taken out. We definitely see an adequate number of shield cards in our Eldar player's hand, so both players indicate no additional actions. What is the Chimera? The Chimera does attack the Autarch, so he's wanting to get rid of area effect. So Autarch is going to end up... Okay, we actually see Gift of Isha discarded as a shield, so definitely not a surprise, because we've got Doom likely to be seen on the following turn, and Autarch Salakia uses this opportunity to take a swing back, and that is an absolute guaranteed kill. Even a 2 shield icon card would not have prevented that Chimera token from being destroyed. And of course, Klavex Warleader has no eligible targets at this planet because Eldorath is a warlord. Okay, so definitely not tremendously surprising. We actually see Yavaren triggered, so that's going to be a Slith mercenary put into play. I'm sure that Eldorath was hoping that a Clavex Warleader might be put into play. The Starbane's Council is almost assuredly being sent to its doom, pun intended, but so is this Slith mercenaries here. So we're going to see our headquarters phase. The entire game is going to come down to a battle at this planet, and our Eldar player is definitely going to have a little bit of an advantage if we see this Doom just wreck all of Kith's HQ here. So very simple mistake from me earlier, forgetting that Doom can't destroy unique units. The initiative token for the very final, under any circumstance, final round of the game goes to Packmaster Kith. What is Kith going to play? She'd better make it good. We see a copy of Shadowfield, so that's another 2-icon card, and we see a Clavex Warleader, which is going to be critically important because we do see 11 cards, 11 resources in total for our Dark Eldar players. That's 2 Clavex and an Archon's Terror. So definitely our Dark Eldar player is still in the running for this game. For Eldorath, he's got a Rogue Trader, he's got a promotion in his hand, so he's drawn 8 more cards than has Kith. But in regard to resource generation, I wish I knew which player generated more, just because Eldorath has been so efficiently choked this entire game. But what are we going to see from our Dark Eldar player? Are we going to see a copy of Slith Mercenaries put out to that planet? I suppose that would make the most sense to me. We end up seeing Chimera Den relocate that single Chimera, so it looks like we must be expecting a Doom or something like that, or at least he's just trying to delay giving his opponent any and all information. So it looks like we've actually seen a change of tactics. We see a Warlock Destructor instead of Doom. So I suppose he's just wanting to spend those resources to get as much value as possible. And certainly 2 copies of Warlock Destructor are going to be able to deal out much more damage than would something along the lines of a Doom. This Slith Mercenaries can't outcompete a Starbane's Council when it comes to damage. Solarite Avedis is an immensely frustrating unit, but it's not going to be able to, take an enormous amount of damage when something like a Starbane's Council can hit it for 5, reduced to 3. But those Clavex Warleaders are going to be such an enormous thorn in our Eldar player's side, just because not only do they kill a unit, but they themselves drop into play as a 3/3 attacker. So we end up seeing another copy of the Warlock Destructor. So things are looking pretty grim. Looks like Ready Spades has passed, and we see all of our warlords, of course, commit to planet number 1. So Eldorath ended up exhausting a Chimera token. A lot of Dark Eldar units are arriving exhausted, so there's, I suppose, what exactly is Kith going to do? Kith is going to have to retreat very, very quickly here, so looks like we could see resources denied of our Eldar player, and then he's not going to have any resources with which to fund any sort of events, not as if he had any, going to this final round of combat. So he ends up drawing 1 card, which is a Void Pirate, no good at all, and now it's all going to come down to this battle here. So Kith is the only Dark Eldar unit that remains unexhausted. If Kith takes a swing, she risks being destroyed, and then the game is lost. So Kith is going to have to spend her first action in order to retreat. And then, as frightening, as daunting as all of those Clavex Warleaders are, there's going to have to be something to survive to deal out damage, but that Solarite is very likely going to enable these Warleaders to interplay. So we do end up seeing Packmaster Kith retreat, so goodbye, Packmaster Kith. Was nice knowing you. Now you're going to be gone for the remainder of the game. Ready Spades calls out any action, so no Archon's Terror for our Eldar player. Chris decides to pass. He's not going to take an action. It looks as though Autarch Salakia uses 1 resource to gain, I can only assume, Area Effect 1, and that is just going to be a tremendous amount of damage dealt out to all of these units. So Ready Spades calls out area effect. We get a call out of any action for Chris, and of course he does not have anything that he can play, so Chris is going to have to, with only a couple shield icon cards in hand, deal out a tremendous amount of damage to his units. So Siren Zithlax is in danger of being destroyed, as is this Chimera token, and then everything else is just going to be monumentally vulnerable, and Solarite Avetus taking 1 point of damage sets her up to be potentially killed by a Starbane's Council. So let's see how exactly this is going to occur. It's got to be a little bit frustrating for our Eldar player, just in regard to he has to know that as soon as one of his units take damage, Klavex Warleaders are going to start to fill the table here. So what are we going to see? All of these Dark Eldar units are damaged. We saw a Chimera token destroyed. Siren Zithlax is destroyed. We keep getting prompts for actions here. An Archon's Terror removes a Starbane's Council from the planet, so that's going to be gone for the remainder of the game. And now it's going to be up to Eldorath. There's no more actions to be done by our Dark Eldar player. So we see a Slith Mercenaries take a swing of 2 at Solarite Avetus. It's only going to ultimately deal 1 point of damage, but it's going to essentially destroy itself. We see Shadowfield discarded, so that's going to completely negate all of that incoming damage to Solarite Avetus. That's a little bit of a curious choice, because all damage ends up being halved prior to the opportunity to shield. So that was a 2 shield card used for just a single point of damage. But let's see here. So the Solarite takes no damage from the Slith Mercenary, so it itself doesn't take damage. The Solarite takes 2 points of damage from the Incubus Warrior, and it ends up dying. I'm sure that our Dark Eldar player is trying to pace himself to kill off as many of these units as he can without taking any damage to his own forces, and it looks as though he's actually going to be able to pull it off. The only trick is that the Solarite is going to get an opportunity to attack, so that can start that Klavex Warleader train. Or, I suppose I actually did my math wrong. So Kith's Chimera Masters is destroyed, and quite handily we see Eldorath Starbane destroy the Solarite Avetus, but we see a Klavex Warleader touchdown played out by Chris, consuming some of his scarcely few remaining resources, and unfortunately for him, there are no wounded Eldar units in play. He's not going to be able to trigger that reaction, but he is going to be able to take a swing at that Wild Rider Squadron. It immediately takes 3 points of damage, and now there are no Eldar remaining actions. There are no relevant Eldar events in Ready Spade's hand, and this is going to set Chris up perfectly to deploy his second single remaining copy of the Klavex Warleader, and we actually see it splash down interplay, and that Wild Rider Squadron is going to be targeted, and it is going to be immediately destroyed. So the Wild Rider Squadron is gone. The Klavex Warleader exhausts. It's potentially going to bloody Eldorath. I'm not sure that our Dark Eldar player can win it at this point, but we end up seeing a copy of Promotion thrown out. It looks like it's only going to be 2 points of damage tossed onto Eldorath, and at this point it looks as though Chris has called out good game, so extraordinarily well played on part of both of our players, but it seems as though Eldorath was able to best Packmaster Kith in the end, so an incredibly narrow and harrowing game, but very excellent, stellar, top-notch play from both of our players. So thank you to Brain Damaged, and thank you to Ready Spades for letting me record this game. And as ever, I'll just say, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, you're encouraged to share this content, as the more viewers there are that end up seeing spectacular, epic, incredible games like this one, the more people might end up trying out Conquest, be drawn to our community, and of course, send the message to Fantasy Flight Games to continue to support this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me through Twitter or through Facebook, I'd be happy to commentate, record, and spectate any game of your own, so get in touch. And of course, if you feel like being generous to help me recover some of my file hosting and operating expenses, I'd be absolutely honored were you to donate $1 or $2 you on a strictly monthly basis to me through my Patreon. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.